We have some major news right now. A United States military colonel has resigned from the military because of Donald Trump's contempt of the United States Constitution. Doug Krugman, who served 24 years in the Marine Corps, achieving the rank colonel, has officially resigned in a new op-ed airing at the Washington Post today. Doug Krugman writes that he gave up his future out of concern for the country's future. He submitted his resignation following Pete Hegseth's speech to Pentagon generals and admirals earlier this year, a speech that many condemned as a loyalty test. Krugman also wrote to his fellow service members who are still in the force, telling them that they should feel confident in questioning illegal or immoral orders given by superiors like the President of the United States or the Secretary of Defense. Doug Krugman served 24 years in the Marine Corps. He has resigned because of Donald Trump and his worry about the collapse of our nation's government. Spread the word because people need to know this ahead of No King's Day. Follow along for more and subscribe to my Substack, linked in bio, to support my work.
Secretary of Defense is announcing a top military commander who is in charge of the U.S. Southern Command is retiring now unexpectedly. Remember, this is the region, of course, where those escalating attacks against boats in the Caribbean, those boats off the coast of Venezuela that the Trump administration has said have narco-terrorists on board. We're just getting in a statement here from the Admiral, writing in part, "It's been an honor to serve our nation, the American people, and to support and defend the Constitution for more than 37 years. Secretary Hegseth says Admiral Alvin Halsey will retire at the end of this year. It's not clear why it's happening now, but it's coming, of course, as the president is stepping up that military campaign in the Caribbean, not just on the boat strikes you're seeing here, but as we reported right here last night with those authorization of the CIA operation inside Venezuela.
So, you know, America has a habit, a history, especially when it comes to black people. America tries to use black faces to fuck up black people. Like, the AFRICOM is a black general, the guy they're trying to use, you know, General Langley or whatever the fuck his name is. They're trying to use to bring down Africa. It's a black man. So this guy is the general in charge of the Caribbean. And he saw what Trump is doing. Trump's starting to blow shit up, and he's the face of it. Nigga said, nope, I'm out. You know what? The next person is going to be a black guy too. Well, no, not necessarily. Under Pete Hegseth, might be a white guy. But yeah, man, and black man said, I'm out. You ain't about to use my face to kill my people.
Hi guys, my name is Mesuba and you're welcome back to the channel. So guys, today I come across a video on my TikTok. Then I decided to share it with you guys here. This man served his country for 24 years, gave everything to the uniform, and still had the strength to say enough. That's not betrayal, that is integrity. Because here is the truth. When you join the military, you don't swear an oath to the president, a party, or a man with power. You swear to defend the constitutions, the soul of America itself. And when that very constitution starts getting disrespected or bent for political gain, that's when the real test begins. His resignation isn't just a protest, it's a warning. A warning that loyalty without principle is dangerous. Blind obedience has destroyed too many nations before. Good soldiers know where the line is drawn and they refuse to cross it, even if it costs them everything. This man didn't walk away from duty. He honored it because protecting the constitutions sometimes means standing up to the very people trying to twist it. I want you to see people's reaction towards this video. We will come back to talk about it. So if you are new to this my channel, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel just to help the channel out.
We have some big news this afternoon. The United States military is fighting back against the President of the United States. Today we learned that Marine Colonel Doug Krugman resigned after 24 years in the United States Marine Corps, citing Donald Trump's contempt for the United States Constitution and the erosion of democratic norms in the United States of America. His resignation coincided with Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth's partisan speeches to military leaders. In a new Washington Post op-ed, Krugman writes that he could no longer serve under a president who, quote, tests how far he can ignore constitutional limits, referring to Donald Trump's use of emergency powers, the federal deployment of the National Guard, and labeling cities like Portland war zones. He further condemned Donald Trump's 2025 pardons of January 6th rioters and his refusal to grant asylum to Afghan allies, calling such actions immoral. Krugman went on to further urge those in the United States military, his former colleagues, to question whether or not Donald Trump's orders, the orders he is giving, are legal and moral, and whether or not they actually have to follow him. That is significant news. He served 24 years in the United States military, and he has resigned. He has left the service. And he likely won't be the last one either. There likely will be more military service members in the coming days and weeks to resign from the force as a result of the Trump administration's policies, as a result of Donald Trump himself. And it comes at a time, it's interesting that he cited Donald Trump's contempt for the United States Constitution. Because just minutes ago, in breaking news updates, John Bolton, the former national security advisor to Donald Trump under his first term, was indicted by a grand jury in the District of Maryland. Now, Bolton's indictment is not surprising. We knew that it was coming for a long time after FBI essentially raided his home in Greenbelt, or in southern Maryland, earlier this year. And while now Bolton faces criminal charges associated with the mishandling of classified documents. Now, I know a lot of people don't like John Bolton. He was one of the people, the chief architects behind the failed war in the Middle East, the failed war in Afghanistan and Iraq. But John Bolton is a political opponent of Donald Trump's. This is the third political opponent of Donald Trump's to be indicted in a span of just 3 weeks. You first had former FBI Director James Comey indicted in the Eastern District of Virginia in Alexandria. Then you had Letitia James, the current sitting New York attorney.
So, saw today that another United States military high-ranking member, this was a colonel in the Marines, he served for 24 years, and he resigned because he says after that whole meeting with the president in Hegseth, he feels that Trump is basically destroying the country, destroying the Constitution, and he no longer wants to serve, obviously, or feels like he can serve in the military and be kind of complicit. And he's urged other members to, understand, that they're here for the Constitution, and etc. And this is like the third or fourth high-ranking military official that's quit, due to this administration. And I'm going to be honest with you, I feel like that's cowardice. At the end of the day, if you quit, they're going to get somebody in there that's going to be a yes man. And I've seen people make comments such as, well, they'll lose their pension, or their money. They'll lose their money. They'll be fired if they don't go along, they'll be fired, and then they'll lose their money. And to that I say, you got to give up something to get something. And the reality is, if all of those people that were in the room, there were a lot of high-ranking non-commissioned and commissioned officers in that room. If they all got together and said, we're not following unlawful orders, then who is he going to fire? Because the reality is, their oath is to the Constitution and to the people of this country, not to the president. So if he is asking them to follow unlawful orders, it's their duty to say, we're not going to do that. And if you have all of these high-ranking officials that stand on business and say, we're not going to follow unlawful orders, do you really think he's going to be able to fire all of them? Do you really think he's going to be able to court-martial all of them? And the reality is, if he does fire all of them, which is impossible, but if he does, they can actually sue because they took an oath, a legal oath. The articles of the military, the oath, it all says it's to the Constitution, and the articles of the military say that they don't have to follow unlawful orders. So just like all these other people that have been fired by him unlawfully that sued and got their jobs back, it's the same thing. But the reality is that probably would never happen, because once they stood up here and actually stood on business and said, we're not doing this, more than likely him and Pete Hegseth are going to change their tune. That's just the way it goes. It's just like these news people that said, we're not going to follow your little policies of the Pentagon. Pete Hegseth took all their credentials. But guess what, Pete? Now no one's going to be reporting on what you got going on. So if you want to have your little vanity moment and get on camera, no one's really going to give a damn because there's nobody going to be there to report on you. Sometimes you have to stand for something to get something. And these people that are in these positions, you have all these men and women in the military that report to you. So you don't think that you, with your relationship to these people and these people report to you, if you said we're not following unlawful orders, they would not get in line and follow behind what you're saying because they have more relationship with you than they have to him. And they know if their commanding officer is saying, this is what we're going to do and we're not going to follow these unlawful orders, they're going to go along with it. And they can't fire the whole fucking military. So it's time to stand on business. And it really makes sense. It really not even makes sense, but it really just hits me when I see a lot of people that don't look like me are the ones in the comments saying, well, you know, what about they lose their jobs or this and that? And that is indicative of people who never had to fight for shit. When you never had to fight for nothing, you don't stand on nothing. And things like losing your job or losing are scary for you because you don't have to stand on nothing. And you never have had to because you've never had to really fight for a right. When you have people like me, who my mom was born in 1953, and she's the youngest of four, so her and all my aunts lived during the civil rights movement and trying to get civil rights for people. And they were up north, so it was much better than being in the South. But the reality is, I have a parent who lived during this era. It was not that long ago. When you had the bus boycotts, black people didn't ride the bus for a year and walked to work. That is sacrificing to get what you need. My people have done that. We have sacrificed in so many ways to get what we need. Water hosed, beat, arrested, murdered, like that, not walking for a year. And y'all sit here when you never had to fight for nothing and you crying about, well, this military man going to lose his pension. We ain't going to get nowhere in this country if we don't fight and stand for something. No one is coming to save us. You have to give up something to get something. Crying and going to do protests ain't going to make it happen alone. You have to be willing to fight and give up something. And that's why these military men quitting, it's cowardice. It's cowardice. They should be staying in and fighting and saying, we're not doing this. That is the only way to make change. You saw when they were over here in the soup kitchen lines after not getting paid. Now they're over here trying to, we got to find a way to pay the military. Because they didn't like the optics. It didn't look good. They care about how things look and how people are going to react. And the only way we make change is fighting. And it means giving up something. And if that means these military men have to stay in here, say we're not going to do it and risk possibly getting fired, that's what they need to do. Because at the end of the day, colonels are making $100,000 a year. And that's on only like 2 years of experience. They're making the money. They're not hurting for the paycheck. The colonels and the higher ranking officials are not the ones in the soup kitchen line. They're not the ones hurting. But I guarantee you if they talk to their service members and said, we're not doing this, those service members that are hurting will stand behind them. Stop quitting. Stand for fucking something for once in your life. Please. Okay? Sometimes you got to lose something to get something. That is the reality. Take it from black folks who've been doing this since we got here. Okay?
Another top commander has suddenly resigned. This time, the top commander in Latin America, Alvin Halsey, suddenly quit less than 1 year into his tenure as the head of Southern Command, the individual in charge of the United States Navy in Latin America. Apparently, this resignation comes based on his strong opposition to the Trump regime's war crimes taking place off the coast in Venezuela and Colombia, where the Trump regime continued to demand unlawful orders be carried out in the form of blowing up these fishing boats off the coast of Venezuela and Colombia as well. Here's the reporting. 4-star Admiral Alvin Halsey, head of Southern Command, stepping down after less than a year in his position. One of the U.S. officials said that Admiral Halsey had raised concerns about the mission and the attacks on alleged drug boats. The reporting from CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, and others is as follows. Tensions were simmering between Secretary of Defense, who unlawfully refers to himself as Secretary of War, former Fox News host Pete Hegseth, and Halsey for weeks. Hegseth did not believe that Halsey was moving quickly and aggressively enough to combat drug traffickers in the Caribbean and complained about not being given info he needed about ops per sources. But Southcom, which is what Admiral Halsey led, was concerned about the operations not being lawful. In other
A Marine colonel with 24 years of service just resigned. Not for money, not for politics, but because he says Donald Trump is pushing the military past its constitutional limits. Colonel Doug Krugman wrote in the Washington Post that he couldn't keep serving under a commander who, in his words, shows disregard for the Constitution. He's urging other service members to think before following any orders that could be illegal or immoral. I'm a military family. Almost everyone in my family has served, so I understand what that oath really means. You swear to protect the Constitution, not a politician. And when someone at the top starts testing that line, good soldiers start asking hard questions. Krugman didn't just quit a job. He gave up a lifetime career to make a statement. That loyalty to the Constitution comes first. That's not rebellion. That is its truest form of patriotism. If you believe in this country and what it's supposed to stand for, then share this. Because if people like him are willing to risk everything, the very least that we can do is pay attention.
We have some breaking news. A senior admiral overseeing Trump's illegal operation to blow up civilian ships leaving Venezuela, Admiral Alvin Halsey, has resigned after 37 years in the military. He disagreed with Trump on this policy, and now he's gone. He's African-American. As you know, the Trump people have fired a bunch of African-Americans and women because they don't think they're qualified. They call them DEI because they're minorities. But what's interesting here is this may be the first case of a senior administration official leaving on principle because of their conscience. What Trump is doing is he's blown up some 5 or 6 ships now, illegally, violation of international law, violation of U.S. law. These are war crimes. You're not allowed to just blow up civilians just because. Trump is claiming they're enemy belligerents, but they're not. You've got to be armed. You've got to be organized. You've got to be trying to attack the U.S. They're not. Whether or not they are running drugs, we don't know. Trump is claiming it, but also then you stop the ships. You don't blow them up under international law. And now we've got an African-American admiral leaving again. I hope he's leaving because he resigned and he retired and he decided that he was not going to commit war crimes on behalf of this criminal president. But if he did, he needs to speak out.
Every now and then, someone inside the system blinks first. This week, it was Admiral Alvin Halsey, the man in charge of the U.S. Southern Command. And the timing of his resignation is a little suspicious. See, Halsey's job was simple, right? He oversaw U.S. military operations across Central and South America, including the Caribbean. Drug interdictions, regional stability, counterterrorism. It's not a glamorous post, but it's one of the most sensitive in the Navy. And it's one you don't walk away from mid-mission unless something's wrong. See, and over the last few weeks, right, the U.S. military has been involved in a series of deadly confrontations in the Caribbean. 6 small boats destroyed, 27 people unalived. And the Pentagon says they were drug traffickers. But eyewitness reports and at least one set of survivors tell a different story. See, sources say at least one vessel may have been carrying migrants fleeing Venezuela, not smugglers. And that's where it starts to get ugly. See, Admiral Halsey's resignation was announced quietly. There was no ceremony, no long goodbye. Officially, it's a planned retirement, but unofficially, there's some insiders that are whispering about friction inside the chain of command, particularly over the rules of engagement being used in those Caribbean strikes. Now, multiple reports have hinted that Halsey raised concerns that the mission had expanded beyond its original scope and that the civilian casualties were being brushed aside to maintain this administration's strong border narrative. And if that's true, it isn't just a resignation, it's a crack forming inside the command structure itself. See, Halsey is no lightweight. He's a 30-year Navy veteran. He led carrier strike groups, he commanded the USS Macon Island, and served in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's earned the kind of credibility that you don't dismiss as political. So when someone like that walks away, you don't ignore it. You always have to ask why, because inside institutions like the Pentagon, a well-timed resignation can speak louder than a press conference ever could. Now, over the next few weeks, keep your eye on three things here. If there are internal communications or after action reports that surface about these boat strikes, that's your first sign that Halsey's departure was involuntary. His replacement, if they rush to install a hardliner, it means they're closing ranks. And if they stall, it means something's unraveling. Congressional noise, right? If lawmakers start calling for hearings, that means this story has legs. Admiral Alvin Halsey may turn out to be a footnote in a messy chapter, or the first crack in a dam that's been holding back a flood of uncomfortable truths. Either way, I want you to remember him, because sometimes the people who walk away aren't running from something, they're running back towards the truth. And if that's the case, Halsey might just be the chisel that starts breaking this entire thing wide open.
At the end of the day, uniforms fade, rank retire, but your oath, that promise to defend the constitutions that says forever, Colonel reminded everyone what real service looks like. It's not about who's in charge, it's about what's right. Because when power starts to drift away from principle, it takes just one brave voice to pull it back.